Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Renaissance Room podcast. Happy Friday. It definitely feels like Monday. It's after the holiday. And the holiday always brings about a lot of different feelings and emotions. I think that's for everybody, right? Whether it's relational, oftentimes it is relational, right? Because families, despite our current economic state of, consumerism, it really is about spending time with your family, right? So whether it's the loss of loved ones, whether it's the grief of just having dysfunctional and harmful, toxic family dynamics, right? Holidays can be hard for a lot of people. So it's Friday. And right now I'm currently reading Torn Apart by Dorothy Roberts. And I can honestly say, I think Dorothy Roberts might actually be one of my favorite writers. I think her work is just so important. And absolutely. So this is a great book. This is about the child welfare system and how it, in the 1960s, in the war on drugs, right? How the child welfare system really tore a lot of Black families apart. Talks about incarceration, things like that. I'm actually just now starting this book. It actually came in the mail today. So just looking forward to reading more about this. And I was recently looking at a content creator who is a mother, and she's a hairstylist. I just recently followed her YouTube, or subscribed to her YouTube channel, but just a lot of positive content. And I love seeing Black mothers. I think that there's really something in just life, when it cracks you open, when you start having certain experiences in life, whether it's motherhood or, whatever, right? Fatherhood, whatever, just certain experiences in life. If you let it, it just helps you see the world in a completely different way. And I see Black women, Black mothers in a completely different way. Reading Torn Apart by Dorothy Roberts, I just see Black people, Black mothers in a completely different way. And one of the things that kind of came into my spirit as I was reading this book is just the importance for Black people to educate themselves on African American history. Because I'm telling you right now, when we do not educate ourselves on African American history, we absolutely perpetuate harm within our communities and, towards the people who we really love. We just don't know any better. So much of our social conditioning has been warped, right? So much of it is, based on the foundations of white supremacy, right? And it's harmful, right? If we're not cognizant, right, we absolutely can perpetuate the very harm that the systems and other people perpetuate onto our community. So education is so important. And the thing is, when you start to educate yourself on African American history, you start to kind of renew your mind. You start to gain knowledge. Not only are you much more compassionate, but you honestly start to grieve, right? The times that you didn't know and the times that you did perpetuate harm on others within the community. So it's very important. I think that's, when you talk about community building as Black people, that is the foundation, right? That's the foundation. And this book here, Torn Apart, is actually a pretty easy nonfiction read. I like to read nonfiction, fiction books. I have some good ones, right? I got some Octavia Butler, of course. I absolutely want to read J.K. Nimison, N.H. Jemison. I think it's NHK. Yeah. Jemison's work, right? Following Octavia Butler. I know a lot of her work is similar. I did start reading The City We Became. That was actually a really good book. I just didn't finish it again because, sometimes that happens, but also because my focus is mostly on reading the hard stuff so I can come on here and share. But in today's episode, I was coming on today and I just kind of wanted to speak about, life coming full circle. And I wanted this podcast episode to be a little bit of an encourager. Seeing people share their life experiences, right, in a way that is not evasive, right, and in a way that is not for clout, but in a way that's boundaried, that's honest, and almost like from a God-given truth. I think it's a very beautiful thing. It's a very beautiful testimony. And first, I kind of want to start off by talking a little bit about vulnerability, right? First, pause. Okay, let's pause for a moment here. And I just want to say this, right? For a lot of people, you're not vulnerable, you're just insecure. And I think it's important that we set this foundation because a lot of people think that by being, someone who's essentially feeble, right? Like not delicate, but feeble, right? You're unable to take care of yourself. You're weak. You know what I mean? Weak-willed, like that is not vulnerability. Okay, that is not vulnerability. And one of the things that I just kind of find with a lot of people today is that a lot of people really kind of weaponize the term vulnerability. And, we do it under the guise of like, I'm just being honest, or, here are my feelings. But that's oftentimes very manipulative, right? I personally do not like when I meet people and, they just kind of put too much on me. I think me personally, I've dealt with that my whole life. And it's not to say that I don't like people who are honest, or some people just don't need, some people just need a listening ear, or some people are lonely, right? Like I can absolutely have compassion, but as someone who just from a familial standpoint to friendship standpoint, like I've always carried the weight of people, and I've never had anybody to shoulder that for me. And I won't say ever, right? God provides for me in different seasons, right? There are people who absolutely have showed up, but a lot of times in my life, it was really just me going through hard things, me learning hard lessons, me picking myself back up, right? It's woe to the man who falls and doesn't have another, right? It's the Ecclesiastes verse, right? Two is better than one, right? So for me, I didn't have that. Right. So, it's a bit of a red flag to me today when I meet people who are just so like willing to bear arms. Right. I think it's a bit of an emotional dependency. And I also feel like you lack boundaries. Right. So I feel like people who, come off that way, and I feel like you lack boundaries, it lets me know you're not really going to keep anything sacred in our relationship. Right. You're not going to, keep things private between us. Right. You may be telling my business. You may, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't like people who don't have that level of self-restraint. Right. Because I feel like it's a person who lacks self-control, which we know self-control is actually one of the fruits of the spirit. So red flag to me. I want to share something with you guys that I learned about building intimacy and the 4 levels of intimacy conversationally, right? So the first is just talking about very surface level things, right? You meet people, it's very surface level. I like your shirt. I like this. Oh, okay, where'd you get it from? Oh, okay, you like Zara. Me too. You hear about H&M sale, blah, 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 right? Very general, very surface level, very, very, very mindful, very demure. Second level, we start talking about things like politics, right? Political climates, right? What do you think on this? What are your worldviews on this, right? What do you think about this? What's going on here in the world, in Congo, blah, blah, blah. Like this is the part where it's like, okay, right? And you notice if you take level 2 instead of level 1 in certain places, things get hostile, right? It's no way we should be on the level 2 intimacy in private settings, right? Professional settings. I'm sorry. When you're in a professional setting, there's no need to be talking about level 2 intimacy. That's not the time. That's not the place. Okay. Level 3 intimacy is when we start talking about, we start sharing things like our dreams, right? Our projects, things that we're working on, maybe that looks like, letting somebody into, your hobbies or your, things that you're kind of like into, right? Level 3, letting people get to know you, right? Level 4 is actually when you start to let people into your emotional world. So this is where you kind of start to share your dreams, your hopes, your fears, things like that. Maybe a little bit of that like childhood trauma, things you've been through. That's level 4. Me personally, I would probably put that at level 6, level 7, right? Because I've learned, and this is just through honestly a lot of pain and a lot of hardship, a lot of suffering, right? A lot of things I went through in my life that I didn't have to go through, but I just didn't have the confidence. I didn't have anybody to affirm my sense of self-worth. So a lot of mistakes were made, all right, but God is good. He's a redeemer. He's a restorer. Okay, he can pick up the broken pieces from this sinful world, all right? And so I've, really been someone who was also kind of miscategorized, right, in terms of intimacy. So I share all that with you guys because I think it's important for you to know. I think when you start talking about vulnerability, relational building, one thing I've learned, when you do put these things into practice, first of all, most people aren't getting past level 1 because you realize that you don't have any shared interest with this person, right? They're not into what you're into on that very like person to person type of thing, right? Like you guys don't have any shared interest really, right? If you do make it to level 2, you start to realize some people might be a little bit more, coonery in their ideology. Me personally, as a, as an activist, I mean, really, I am not going to gel with these type of people, right? You get to talking crazy. You get to saying some very ignorant things. We're not making it till we're done, right? Level 2 is kind of where this relationship is going to end, right? And as I mentioned before, professional settings, we're keeping it very cash, right? We're talking about the company. We're talking about what we like to eat for lunch, right? Like, oh, you like Quiznos. I like Quiznos. I don't even think Quiznos is even a thing, but you get the gist, right? Level 4 is for people who've kind of earned this space. And I don't think that you should do this in like the 4 steps of dating, right? This is not something you need to be checking off. This is just something that should develop over time. And if you really take your time with it, most people aren't actually going to get to level 4, because you're going to find that most people aren't really interested in you in level 3, right? They're not really asking questions about you, right? A lot of people today, when you talk about relational dynamics, are seeking to escape themselves, right? They're lost, right? So they're not actually curious about who you are. They're more so like, I want you for what you can do for me, right? The voids, like I said, there's a lot of lost people in the world. So I'm not here to say like this is a bad thing, right? We've all had to find our way out of darkness into light. Okay, praise the Lord. But I'm just more so saying, not everybody that you come across, has the best intentions towards you, right? A lot of people, you can tell, in dating, for example, if somebody's into you, they're going to ask you questions. If they're not really into you, they're not curious about your world, or maybe you're not, emotionally available to let somebody into level 3, right? Like, you see, so my point is, okay, because I'm rambling, but my point is a lot of people are not going to make it to level 4. So it's a huge, okay, maybe not a red flag, but definitely a dark orange flag, right? Flag on the play. Okay, when I meet people and they're trying to be level 4 and all I said was hello, good morning, how are you doing, right? Absolutely red flag. And really what that is a manipulation of kindness. And I got to be honest, you do typically see this within white American society, right? White cultures, right? It's its name of being polite, right? And, my grandchild is doing this or doing that. And, some people it's appropriate, right? Obviously, this is not set in stone. This is like, come on, we got to apply some nuance. We got to apply some complexity, right? Maybe at this time, God has brought this person into your life. You can maybe touch on some of the hardships that they're experiencing. And maybe in this moment, you're called to speak to them, right? We are here to be a light in the dark world. All right. So again, complexity, okay, nuance, we're going to apply it. But generally speaking, people who typically try to lead with level 4 are manipulative, right? Whether they either want to be seen as sympathetic, whether they want a trauma bond, whatever it is, the motive just is not right. And it's a red flag to me. So I guess I'm just coming on to share this with you guys, because I think right now we're kind of in this really icky space, right? Like vulnerability is 100% being weaponized, right? I see this a lot with like male dynamics, right? A lot of work from, people like Sean Galloway and the whole boy crisis and the whoop-de-whoop. Like, it's just a red flag. You want somebody who's self-possessed. You want somebody who has a little bit of control over their lives. Obviously, we don't control anything, right? So at least somebody who is humbly submitted to Yah, all right? Like, you want somebody who is self-possessed, okay? And absolutely possesses the fruit of the spirit, which is self-control. And I know we don't really talk about that a lot. We talk about patience, we talk about love, we talk about kindness, but we don't ever really talk about the fruit of the spirit and one of the fruits being self-control, right? Like somebody who's just spilling all over the place just can't be trusted to me. And that's just me personally. So that's kind of where we are right now. Again, I gave the example of Sean Galloway's work because I heavily critique it, because I think it's really just, BS, if I'm being honest. I think he's really just marketing to, again, people who, are maybe disenfranchised, right? Not because of willpower or really because there's anything systemic in this regard per se, but mostly just because it's a market, it's an audience for it, right? Where there is a platform, where there is, people will do anything to apply for a platform. And just because they're a white male with fancy terms, right? Or a psychology degree does not make them, persons who, are bypass of this marketing scheme that's going on with a lot of self-help authors and sociologists who kind of jump on the wave. Maybe, disregarding the previous bodies of work and research, prior. A lot of times that research that they are disregarding is African-American research, right? Within our communities, they want to come out and say, oh, well, this is what's taking place in the world when Black communities have been suffering and struggling with this for years, right? So, you just have to be mindful of that. Not everything is, new and, profound, you know what I mean? Like some stuff has been here for a while and they've just refused to address it because, it was in the Black community, right? So again, this is why we do the work that we do. So anyway, I hope you got something from this. This podcast episode was about being mindful of weaponized vulnerability today. I think, and if I had to give say something about women just to kind of, I guess, be fair, so to speak, I guess, I'm joking. I don't think that women really weaponize vulnerability. I mean, maybe they do. I think in friendships, I could say that this is a lot more common. Like I said, I think for men, they might read it differently, right? It might be sensed as someone being soft or feminine or compassionate or whatever. Me personally, again, red flag on the play. I'm sorry, dark orange flag, right? We got to have boundaries. You have to have a little bit of self-regard, self-possession, right? You need to have a little self-control. There's just no reason why I need to know about your childhood trauma on the first date. It's a red flag. It's an absolute red flag. I think if you're a kind person, if you're a good person, just be that. Be a kind person. Show it through your mannerism. Show it through your speech, right? The Bible says that kind words are like honey to the soul. That's in Proverbs, okay? It doesn't need to be a thing of you spilling all over the place. I mean, I'm trying to eat my steak. This is too much to process, right? And not everybody can process your trauma, right? Not everybody has dealt with that specific level of trauma. Not everybody has the emotional depth or the words to support you in that trauma, right? So a lot of times you're feeling broken, exposed, and in turn, right, you're saying people are narcissists because they're not empathetic to this trauma, but they were never equipped to go to level 4 in the first place, all right? So have a little self-composure. I think your relationships will thrive because of it. Peace.